The kind of time when the world felt like it was suspended in a hazy fog, and everything from the sounds to the movements seemed muffled, distant. At first, I thought it was just the usual ping of a text, or maybe the soft chime of an incoming call. But no, this was different. This sound was harsh, grating, like an alarm bell ringing in the dead of night. It sliced through the silence of a room, sending a ripple of unease through me. Half asleep, my first instinct was to ignore it. I told myself it was probably nothing, just some random alert or a glitch in an app. But then there was a shift, a strange prickle of unease at the back of my mind. Something tugged at me, a flicker of intuition that refused to be dismissed. I reached over, my hand shaking slightly, and grabbed my phone. The screen lit up with an ominous message. Secure track alert. Location data accessed. The words froze me in place, my breath catching in my throat. The kind of cold shock that ripples through your body when you realize something is very wrong. But you can't quite grasp exactly what. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and a wave of panic washed over me. I didn't even know what Secure Track was. I certainly hadn't downloaded any app by that name. My pulse quickened as my brain scrambled to make sense of what I was seeing. I am Megan. In this moment, this notification marked the beginning of the end of a life I had known as normal. I sat up, careful not to disturb Jason, who was lying next to me, his back turned in that familiar, peaceful sleep posture. His steady breathing was a stark contrast to the chaos now unfolding inside me. The dim blue light from my phone cast an eerie glow on the walls, making the shadows around the room seem deeper, darker. I tried to make sense of what I was seeing, but nothing made sense. Secure Track. The name was unfamiliar, yet there was something about it that felt personal. I could feel my heart thumping painfully in my chest, the kind of deep, unsettling thud that comes with the realization that something you've been living with, something you've trusted, might be betraying you in ways you can't even begin to understand. I quickly fumbled through my apps, swiping through the icons on my home screen, but there was no sign of Secure Track. In fact, I had no recollection of ever seeing it before. I had never downloaded it. I didn't even remember hearing about it. My heart pounded louder as I dug through my settings, my fingers trembling as I searched for any trace of the app. And there it was, running silently in the background. How long had it been there? How had I not noticed? I whispered a curse under my breath, panic setting in as I opened the app. The screen blinked to life, revealing a map. My map. The familiar streets of the town where I lived, where I worked, where I had spent years of my life, suddenly looked foreign. The app had tracked my every move with unnerving precision. It wasn't just the obvious places, the school where I taught, the coffee shop where I met Carla every Sunday for our usual catch-up, the random detour I'd made to buy Jason's anniversary gift from the jewelry store. No, it was more than that. It was every small, seemingly insignificant moment. The way I paused at the intersection near my house the other morning, or the side street I had taken last week when I was late. Each route, each step was documented, mapped out in cold, digital precision. I felt dizzy, as though the walls were closing in on me, suffocating me. The room, once so familiar and comforting, felt suddenly too small, too tight. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced with questions, each one darker than the last. Who was watching me? Why? I snapped the phone shut, my hands shaking as I set it on the nightstand. My heart pounded in my ears as I tried to steady my breath, but it was no use. I couldn't calm myself down. Desperate for some air, I threw off the covers and swung my legs over the side of the bed, careful not to wake Jason. He slept through everything, his back turned as always, oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. I quietly padded out of the bedroom, my bare feet silent on the cold wooden floor. As I walked down the hallway, I passed Kayla's room. My 15-year-old daughter was sound asleep, her face peaceful in the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through her window. She had no idea that her mother's world was beginning to unravel. The thought made my stomach tighten. How was I going to protect her from this? How could I protect any of us if I didn't even understand what was happening? I reached the kitchen. the harsh fluorescent lights overhead flickering on as I flipped the switch. The brightness stung my eyes, adding to the sense of disorientation. I leaned against the counter, my mind spinning, my heart still racing. What was Secure Track? Why had it been tracking me? And, most terrifying of all, who had been monitoring it? I tried to steady my breathing, but every breath felt shallow. Too quick. The weight of the situation pressed down on me, a suffocating, relentless force that left me gasping for clarity. And yet, no clarity came. Only more questions. And fear. Endless fear. I couldn't stay in the dark forever. But the light, this light, was blinding. This was just the beginning, and I had no idea how far this would go. The room was suffocating, the weight of what I'd uncovered pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. It wasn't just the app that was invading my life, it was everything. My entire existence, every conversation, every thought, every intimate moment had been meticulously cataloged. The discovery felt like a bomb going off inside my chest, leaving me breathless and disoriented. I hadn't expected this. How could I have? Who could be so cruel, so invasive, as to steal pieces of my life like this? My mind raced with 1,000 questions, none of which had answers. Why? Who? How? I felt my hands tremble as I reached for a glass of water. The glass felt icy against my skin, as though it, too, was frozen by the horror of what I'd just uncovered. The house around me was silent, an unnatural kind of silence. Not the peaceful, calming quiet I'd always known, but a tension-filled stillness that seemed to press against me from every corner. The only sound in the house was the faint, mechanical hum of the refrigerator, a reminder of the normalcy that had once existed here. Now, it felt like a distant memory. With shaky fingers, I picked up my phone again. A cold sense of dread washed over me as the screen flickered to life. My heart seemed to stop as a new notification popped up, its meaning unmistakable. Secure Track. Audio recording in progress. I felt my blood run cold, pooling in my stomach like ice. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My phone buzzed again, almost mocking me with its persistence. I couldn't breathe. My hand was shaking so badly that I could barely swipe the screen, but somehow I forced myself to open the app once more. The app had already known about my every move, but now it had me trapped in its web of surveillance, its eyes in my ears. There on the screen was a folder labeled Recordings. My fingers hovered over it for a moment before I finally tapped it, as though I was opening a Pandora's box I could never close. The folder clicked open, and there, in the list of files, was the most recent recording. Just 3 days ago. I hesitated for a split second, but then, as if driven by some terrible curiosity, I pressed play. It was my voice, soft, distant, almost like an echo from a time I hadn't even realized had been recorded. I don't know, Carla. Jason's been acting strange lately. Working late, always on his phone. I felt the floor beneath me shift, as though the ground itself had started to crumble away. My stomach twisted, the blood draining from my face. That was from a conversation I'd had just a few days ago. A conversation I'd had in the safety of my own home, thinking it was a private moment, a moment of vulnerability I shared only with a friend. But someone else had been listening. Someone had been watching. Someone knew every word. My breath caught in my throat, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. My pulse hammered against my temples. I slammed my finger onto the screen to stop the recording, my whole body trembling with the sick realization that I was no longer alone. Not in the way I thought. Not in my own life. Not in my own home. Someone had been tracking me, monitoring my every move. My text messages, my call history, my internet searches, they were all in there. I wasn't just being watched. I was being studied as though I were some sort of experiment. How long had this been going on? How much of my life had they taken? My mind screamed in panic. The walls closing in around me as the app's grip tightened. I stared at the screen, unable to make sense of it all. For an app like this to be installed, someone had to have had physical access to my phone. Someone I trusted. Someone who knew me. Someone close enough to sneak into my life without me noticing. And as the dark chilling thoughts settled in. I realized with a sinking feeling that it had to be Jason. He was the only one who could have done this. He was the only one who had the means and the opportunity. The realization hit me harder than the recordings themselves. Jason, my partner, my confidant, had been lying to me. Every late night, every strange shift in his behavior, it had all been part of something much darker. He'd been watching me. He'd been listening to my every word. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The room spun as I clutched the phone in my hands, the truth sinking in like a stone. Who was Jason, really? What else had he been hiding from me? And what would I do now that I knew the truth? I stood frozen, unable to move, my body shaking violently as the weight of betrayal settled in. Every sound around me now felt like an echo of the secret world I had never known existed. My mind couldn't grasp the enormity of what had happened, and yet, deep down, I knew one thing for certain. My life would never be the same again. The house was unnervingly quiet, except for the soft creak of floorboards overhead. My heart thudded in my chest, and I held my breath, straining to listen. Footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, echoing down the narrow hallway that led to the stairs. Jason. It was probably nothing. He had a habit of getting up around this time, usually to use the bathroom, just like every night for the past 10 years. But tonight the sound of his steps felt different, somehow. They seemed too measured, too purposeful. A chill ran down my spine, prickling my skin in a way I couldn't explain. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling as I fumbled with the screen. The app, the one I had installed on a whim just a few days ago, unsure if it was paranoia or a gut feeling that prompted me to do so. I've been tracking Jason's phone activity, something I never thought I'd resort to. But now, with that familiar click of his boots on the hardwood floors above me, I couldn't help but feel like I was walking in the dark, trying to make sense of a puzzle that didn't quite fit. The notification appeared again. Another alert. My breath caught. I couldn't keep doing this. I quickly shut the app down, swiping away the invasive messages that had been piling up. There was a strange, sinking sensation in my stomach as I deleted the notifications. I knew I shouldn't be snooping, but how else could I explain the gnawing doubt creeping into my thoughts? I had to know. I had to figure out what he was hiding. I needed proof. Something solid. There was no room for mistakes. If Jason knew I was even remotely suspicious, it would all unravel. He was too smart for that. Too calculating. I climbed back into bed, the blankets feeling colder than usual. I tried to settle, to breathe deeply, and push the thoughts out of my mind. But the silence in the room felt suffocating, and my eyes wouldn't close. Instead, they stared at the ceiling, wide open, searching for answers in the shadows above me. The man I had trusted for over a decade, the father of our daughter, was hiding something. The weight of that truth settled heavily in my chest, pressing down like an anchor. What could it be? Was it just a momentary lapse in judgment, a fleeting mistake? Or was it something deeper, something darker? I replayed the events of the past few months in my mind. Little things, tiny details I had brushed off at the time, now seemed to take on new meaning. The way he had become distant lately, the late nights at the office, the constant need for privacy, the odd patterns in his phone calls. At first, I thought I was just imagining things, letting my insecurities get the better of me. But now I wasn't so sure. Was he cheating? Was this all just about infidelity, or was there more to it? Something that went beyond betrayal, beyond broken trust? The phone buzzed again, slicing through my thoughts like a sharp knife. I almost ignored it, almost let it fade into the background of my anxiety. But then I saw the message, and my blood ran cold. An unknown number. No name, just a cryptic line of text. Be careful what you search for, Megan. Some truths are better left buried. The words hit me like a physical blow. My body stiffened, my breath catching in my throat as my mind raced. How did they know? How did they know what I was looking for? The weight of the message hung heavy in the air, each word sending a tremor through my nerves. Was this a warning? A threat? Or just a twisted joke? I stared at the screen, my mind whirling, trying to make sense of it. Who was behind this? What was the connection to Jason? Was someone watching me? Or worse, Was Jason involved in something far more sinister than I had ever imagined? My heart pounded in my ears, the sound of it drowning out the rest of the world. I could feel the walls closing in around me. I had to act. But what if this was more than I was prepared for? What if digging deeper only uncovered a world of lies and secrets I wasn't ready to face? The thought of it, of everything I thought I knew coming crashing down, made my stomach churn. And yet, the thought of standing idly by, of letting this all slip away without knowing the truth, was just as unbearable. I couldn't let him get away with it. Not if there was something more at stake here. Not if my own safety, my daughter's safety, was on the line. I needed to find out the truth. But the question was, could I handle what I might discover? The morning light broke through the blinds, but it felt too soon, too bright, like it was intruding on a world that had suddenly gone off kilter. I hadn't slept. My mind had been racing, turning over thoughts, accusations, doubts, and questions that I couldn't shake. The house was still, the kind of stillness that felt like a thick fog hanging in the air, too heavy to breathe in. I moved through the motions of the morning routine. It was automatic now. I prepared Kayla's lunch, packed it with her favorite snacks, and set the coffee brewing, the sound of the machine grinding the beans filling the silence like an old, familiar tune. I didn't want to make eye contact with Jason, didn't want to acknowledge the chasm that had opened between us overnight. But it was there, unmistakable. The silence between us was deafening, the kind that screamed louder than words ever could. Jason appeared at the top of the stairs, his movements sharp, precise, like he was slipping into a role he knew too well. He was dressed in his blue suit, the one he wore for important client meetings. The same suit that felt like armor, the one that made him look so untouchable. He didn't even look at me as he walked into the kitchen, filling his coffee mug with a practiced hand. His focus was entirely on the mug, as if the world beyond it didn't matter. "Big meeting today," I said, my voice sounding strange in the silence, like I was trying to bridge a gap that had grown too wide. "Yeah," he muttered, barely sparing me a glance. "The Morrison account. Lots to do." He didn't elaborate, didn't offer more than the bare minimum. The words felt rehearsed, like the same excuse he'd given for the past 2 weeks. The Morrison account, the excuse that had been his shield, his way of avoiding everything else. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to throw all of it out into the open, about the spyware, about the secrets I was certain he was hiding, about everything that felt wrong. But instead, I kept my lips sealed. My hand shook slightly as I reached for the butter dish, fighting the overwhelming urge to demand answers, to demand the truth. "Mom, have you seen my USB drive?" Kayla's voice cut through the tension like a sudden burst of sunlight through a cloudy sky. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, her damp hair still tangled from the shower, her dark eyes full of a quiet concern that made my heart ache. She was the last person who deserved to be caught in the middle of whatever was happening between Jason and me. But there she was, sensing the shift in the air, the distance that had grown between her parents. I forced a smile, though it felt fragile, like it might shatter any second. "Check the living room," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "You were working there last night." Kayla hesitated for a moment, her eyes flickering between Jason and me, then back again. She was too smart to ignore the tension. I could see the questions in her gaze, the way she was trying to piece together what was happening without asking directly. "Dad," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You promised you'd help me with my coding project this weekend." Jason stiffened, his back straightening like a soldier at attention, but he didn't meet her eyes. "Sorry, kid," he said, his voice strained, the words coming out like they were being forced through a clenched throat. "Something came up at work. Maybe next weekend." Kayla's face fell, the disappointment clear as day. "Work again?" she asked, the words quiet but sharp with hurt. It stung. For a moment, I saw my daughter, the girl who had always believed in her father's promises, in his ability to balance everything, break just a little bit. Her trust was faltering, and it was impossible to ignore. Jason leaned down, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead, the gesture feeling more like a habit than a genuine act of affection. "Love you both," he said, but the words felt hollow, as if they had lost their meaning over time. Worn down by the weight of everything unsaid, I watched as Kayla left the room, her footsteps soft on the wood floor, her shoulders a little slumped. And then it was just the two of us again, standing in the kitchen in a silence that felt like it was closing in, like the walls were closing in. I wanted to reach out to him, to demand answers, to fight for the truth. But the weight of everything between us, everything that had been left unsaid, felt too heavy, like it was locking me in place. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The world felt like it was holding its breath, and I was holding mine. What were we becoming? It had been a quiet morning, the kind of stillness that clings to the air when the weight of unspoken words hangs heavily between people. I hadn't slept, not properly. The sound of my own breathing had kept me awake, counting the minutes, the hours, while my mind spun in circles, consumed by thoughts I wasn't ready to face. But Kayla, my daughter, she was always so perceptive. I didn't know if it was because she had inherited my sense of intuition or if she was simply too familiar with the shadows behind my eyes, but she knew something was wrong. After he left, Kayla had been standing there, watching me with those big brown eyes of hers, those eyes that saw too much for someone her age. The silence between us was thick, like an invisible wall I couldn't seem to break down, and yet, in her gaze, I could feel the quiet demand for answers. "Mom, what's going on?" she asked, her voice carrying that mix of concern and frustration. "Why do you look like you haven't slept in days?" I forced a smile, but it felt brittle, fake, slipping at the edges. "I'm fine, sweetheart." I lied, the words leaving my mouth far too easily. "Just stressed with work." Kayla wasn't buying it. She crossed her arms over her chest, a familiar defensive stance that made her look much older than 15. "I'm 15, Mom, not 5. I know something's wrong." She glanced down at my hands, and for the briefest moment, I saw her eyes flicker with worry. She had noticed, of course, she always noticed, the tremor in my hands that I couldn't hide. The way I kept washing the same plate over and over again last night, as if I could somehow scrub away the fear that clung to me like dust. She wasn't naive. She knew something was out of place. "You were up late last night," Kayla continued, her voice softer now, but no less insistent. "And you keep washing that same plate over and over." I inhaled deeply, trying to steady myself. The truth was there, just beneath the surface, pulling at me, begging to be spoken. But I wasn't ready to let it out. Not yet. Not while my heart was still racing. Not while I could feel the weight of the secrets pressing down on me. "I'm fine," I repeated, my voice shaking ever so slightly. But Kayla's skeptical look told me she didn't believe me. She knew me too well. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. The sharp vibration cut through the silence, and I felt my heart skip a beat. I didn't want her to see it. Not yet. I didn't want her to know what I'd been keeping from her, what had been haunting me in the quiet of the night. I glanced at the screen, secure track, another alert. My stomach tightened, and my breath caught in my throat. Audio recording saved. Kitchen, 6:30 a.m. I quickly grabbed my phone, stuffing it in my pocket before Kayla could see it. My mind raced with 100 thoughts at once. How could I explain this to her? How could I tell her that the recordings, the messages, the constant fear had become a part of our lives now? "I need to head to school early for a meeting," I said quickly, trying to mask the panic that was creeping up my spine. I grabbed my purse, eager to escape, to create some distance between the truth and the illusion I had built around her. I had to protect her from this, whatever this was. I had to protect her from him. "Will you be okay taking the bus?" I asked, my voice failing to sound normal. "Sure," Kayla muttered, her voice distant. The hurt in her tone was unmistakable, a quiet echo of the trust she had once had in me, now fractured by the cracks that were beginning to show. I wanted to tell her, to hold her, and explain everything. But I couldn't. Not yet. I had to figure this out first. The truth was a tangled mess, and I couldn't untangle it without breaking her heart. I wasn't ready to break her, not like that. As I turned to leave, I could still feel her eyes on me, full of questions, full of doubt. And I knew, deep down, that she wasn't going to let it go. She was going to find out the truth, whether I was ready for it or not. And when that moment came, when the walls I had so carefully built around her crumbled, would she still look at me the same way? Or would the hurt in her voice grow louder, a bitter reminder of everything I'd kept hidden? I didn't know. And that uncertainty, more than anything, was what kept me up at night. The drive to school was nothing but a blur of thoughts, my mind spinning in circles. I had no idea how to process the events of the past few days, how to make sense of the chaos that had infiltrated every corner of my life. The moments leading up to this felt like a dream, only it wasn't a dream, it was real, and I was trapped in it. I parked my car in a lot, my hands shaking as I grabbed for my phone. There had to be someone who could help me. I scrolled through my contacts, my fingers trembling as I searched for Carla's number. Carla had been my friend since college. She'd been the one who always had my back, the one who understood the world of tech better than anyone. If anyone could help me make sense of this nightmare, it was her. But before I could even tap her name to dial, a new text came through. My heart skipped a beat as I saw the sender, the same unknown number that had haunted me for days. The message read, "Careful who you trust, Megan. Carla might not be the friend you think she is." A chill shot down my spine. How could they know I was about to call her? The timing, the words, it was too much. It didn't feel like a warning anymore. It felt like a threat, personal and dangerous. Just as I was about to spiral into panic, I heard a knock on my car window. I jumped, startled, and looked up to see Mike standing there. Mike from the English department, looking concerned. "You okay, Megan? The meeting's about to start," he said, his voice filled with genuine worry. I forced a smile, but it felt like it was made of glass, fragile, ready to crack at the slightest touch. "Yeah, coming," I said, my voice not quite my own. My mind was elsewhere, racing through the implications of the text, trying to make sense of the threat, of everything that was happening. I stepped out of the car, my body moving almost on autopilot as I made my way into the school building. But just as I crossed the threshold, my phone buzzed again. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was stare at the screen, my hands frozen in place as I read the latest message. "Smart girl. Your daughter's smarter. Maybe she should look into that computer science project more carefully. A lot of interesting things to learn about digital privacy these days." The words punched me in the gut. This wasn't just a warning anymore. This wasn't about me, about my life or my marriage. This was a direct threat to Kayla. My daughter was being dragged into this twisted game, and I had no idea who was playing it or why. I stood there, feeling like the world around me was closing in, the walls of the school pressing in from all sides. My heart was pounding in my chest, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. What were they trying to do? What do they want from me? And then, like a cruel punch to the gut, my phone buzzed once more. Another message from the same unknown number. The final blow, the final piece of the puzzle. "This isn't just about your husband anymore, Megan. This is far bigger than that. Far more dangerous. And you're not the one in control anymore." I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Everything I had trusted was crumbling around me. Every person I thought I could rely on now shrouded in doubt. I couldn't even trust my own phone, the one thing that had always connected me to the world. Jason? Couldn't trust him. Carla? Maybe not. Even Kayla, was she safe? Were any of us safe? But then, through the chaos, something inside me stirred. A fierce, unyielding fire deep in my chest. I wasn't just going to let this happen. I wasn't going to let these faceless people tear apart my life, my family. Not without a fight. I clenched my fists, my resolve hardening like steel. I didn't know how, and I didn't know when, but I knew one thing for sure. I would fight back. Whatever it took, whoever I had to face, I would not let this go. I would not let them win. For Kayla, for myself, for all of us. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The fight had just begun, and I wasn't about to back down.